In this video, we'll be going over how to sort and order variables in R. For this video, we'll be using the melbdata.csv file, which I have already imported in and renamed to house. This is the same dataset we used in the previous video about missing values, so if you already have it downloaded, that's fantastic. If you do not, there will be a link in the description where you can download it, as well as this entire R script with all the code filled out in it. So sorting and ordering things in R is very useful. It's something that can come up a lot because a lot of times you want to see maybe the top 10 values in a column. You might want to see the bottom 5 in another. Maybe you want to reorganize your whole data set ordered by one of the columns. There's a lot of different uses for sorting and ordering. The reason I keep saying sorting and ordering separately is because even though they do basically the same thing, what they return is slightly different. It's probably easiest if I just show you. So first we're going to look at the sort function. So what the sort function does is it sorts and returns all the actual data values. So if you sort by a column, it will take the numbers in the column, put them in order, it does low to high by default, and return those. So for instance, if we look at the house data set real quick, I am going to sort by price. So if I type in sort, and then we want to select the price column, and the way we do that is we do the name of our data set, so in this case house, $, we always do the $sign to select columns, and then it'll bring up a lot of things. I see price right here, so I'm going to click that, and now if I run this, there's 13,000 rows, so it prints off a lot. It prints off 1,000 max before it cuts itself off. You see, if we look at the data, it's starting at the lowest, and you see it only gets bigger as we scroll down. Now these values here are the actual prices of houses. So see, the lowest priced house in this data set is $85,000, and the next one is $131,000, and so on. With large data sets, you see running this absolutely flooded my console, printed off 1,000 numbers. One little thing I like to do to, stop this from happening is there's a function called head. What head does is it just prints the first couple rows of something, or the first couple values of something, and by default that's 6. So like, for instance, if I put head around what we just did, and if I run this, you'll see it just prints off the first 6 house prices, and these are the lowest 6 house prices, which this is quite helpful because what if you had a question saying what are the 5 lowest questions in this house data set? Then you could either run the first line and scroll up and then up all the way up here, up there, the first 5, or you could use the head function, which again prints off 6 by default. But you can change that. For instance, if I wanted only the first 5, not the first 6, you can put a comma and however many rows you actually want to print off, or values, because it doesn't have to be rows. Like these aren't rows, these are just the first 6 numbers. Now if we want to sort high to low, we have to add an additional argument to our sort function. I'll type sort, house $, price, and then inside the sort function, so right after the column you're sorting, you put a comma, and then we type decreasing, and you'll see it'll autofill, decreasing equals true, which again is just a capital T or capital T-R-U-E, whatever you want to type. I usually just do T. You'll tell it's working if it turns orange. Now if I sorted this would return all the values high to low, but I don't really want to flood my console, so I'm just going to put a head around the whole thing, and this will print off the first 6. And you'll see the most expensive houses in this data set, $9 million, 8 million, and so on. So that's sort. Sort can be useful, especially if all you're interested in is, like what are the 5 cheapest house prices, and you don't care about anything else. Sort can be very helpful for that. But I would argue that the order function is actually more useful in a lot of cases. I mean, it's very situational, but I find order to be more useful generally. What order does is it does the exact same thing. It sorts the data, but instead of returning the actual numbers, like instead of returning the actual house prices, it returns the row numbers. So it'll return the exact same information, just now it's the row numbers for each of those things. So for instance, if I come and type down here, I'm going to put a head around it just so the console isn't flooded. I'm going to put order this time, and I'm still just going to put house $, price. Now if I run this, you'll see it gives me these 6 numbers. Now these are all just the row numbers that match up with the 6 lowest house prices. So the house in row 2653, that's the house that's $85,000. And just real quickly, I'll prove that. If I do house, and I'll just do price, we'll select from the price. If I want to look at the 2,653rd row in the price column, you'll see it is $85,000. Again, if we want to sort high to low, it's the exact same thing. I'm actually just going to copy and paste this just inside the order function. So after your column, go to comma, decreasing again equals true. And now if I run this, this gives back the top 6 most expensive houses, basically the row numbers of the most expensive houses. So the house in row 12,095, that's the house that costs $9 million. And now see, what we can use these row numbers for is to find out other information about, the houses. Because see, I can see, okay, great, these are the top house prices. These are the most expensive houses. But I don't learn anything else about them. For instance, I know you have a question about stocks, where it's like, what 5 companies have the largest stock price or dividend? I don't remember which column it was, but you have to answer something like that. And if you just sort, you can find the 5 highest dividends, but that doesn't tell you, what companies had those 5 highest dividends. That's when you would use order. Because with order, we can actually, what these are just row numbers. So we can subset, and I have a video about subsetting. If you haven't seen that yet, there'll probably be a card popping up right now. But we can take these row numbers and basically grab whatever information we want from the data set. Like, let's say we want to use these row numbers. We want to find out more information about top 6 most expensive houses, I guess. So you can do this in one line, but it gets a bit crowded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it apart. I want to make a variable that stores these row numbers in it, these top 6 row numbers. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to say top 6. Top 6 is equal to this whole thing. So now if I run this, you'll see that top 6 has now popped up in the top right, and you'll see that this word is now just equal to these 6 numbers. So now let's say that I'm interested in finding out what suburbs the most expensive houses are. Because you see, if I go back to the house data set, we have a column suburb, and maybe I'm just interested what suburbs have the most expensive houses. So what I can do is maybe I want to return the suburb and the price of the 6 most expensive houses. What I can do is we'll do the subsetting with square brackets. So I'm going to type the name of my data set, square brackets. Then the first thing we have to put in the square brackets is our row numbers. And in this case, that's just top 6. Top 6 are our 6 row numbers. And then I want to see the suburbs and the prices for each of the houses. So which columns are those? Okay, we know suburb is column 1 and price, that's column 5. So what I'm going to put here is we're going to do the C. Because remember, when we're doing multiple values, we have to do the C. I'm going to do column 1 and column 5. And now if I run this, you'll see this returns the top 6 most expensive houses. And if you look at the prices, you'll see that those do line up with what we had here. So you can see that the most expensive house, that's in Mulgrave. The second one's in Canterbury, and so on. And we could return any information we wanted. I just did suburb, but what if you also wanted the address? If you also wanted the address, you could just put a 2 in here. I know some people, myself included, tend to do things all in one line. So for instance, if you didn't want to break it apart like this, you could just take this whole thing and put it inside where the top 6 is. You can do it all in one line because now R sees this, the word top 6, and this whole thing as exactly the same thing. So it does not matter which one you choose to do. And one final thing, we've been sorting and ordering by numbers so far, but you can do that for words as well. It just sorts by alphabetical order. So for instance, if I sort, well, let's put a head around it. Let's sort, what do we want to sort? I think seller. Seller is a word column. Yeah, you see who sold the house, basically. Let's sort by seller, and if you just leave it by default, it'll sort in alphabetical order. If you put decreasing equals true, it'll do reverse alphabetical order. I know the sellers repeat a lot, so I'm going to print the first 50 rows. So now if I run this, it prints off the first 50 values in the seller G column by alphabetical order. And so at, those ones come first because the symbols and numbers come first. And we see there's a lot of Abercrombies, then it goes to Ace, and then it goes to Alex Carbon, and there's a lot of Alex Carbon. And if I printed more, you would see, well, you can already see it's in alphabetical order. So I think that's about it for the basics of sorting and ordering. I think this is enough to get you through homeworks and stuff like that. If you do have any more questions about sorting and ordering, please leave those in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you have other questions about just other stats things that I haven't covered yet, or you just have questions about, you can leave those in the comments too. I'll be more than happy to answer those when I get a chance. Yeah, I hope this was helpful to you.